On this episode of SmartPro Radio, I'm joined by Ben McPherson of SmartPro Financial and Steve Jones of Autumn Hope Ministry. Autumn Hope Ministry is a unique ministry in the fact that it's a rescue ministry. Steve goes to some of the worst places in the world and pulls people out of literally modern day slavery. He talks about that experience, how debt brings that on in a lot of these cultures, and how you can be part of the solution. This conversation's deep and powerful, and I'm honored to have him on SmartPro Radio.
Discussions in this show are for entertainment and educational purposes only and should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through registered representatives of Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a broker-dealer, member FINRA, SIPC. Advisory services through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors Incorporated, a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and SmartPro Financial are not affiliated.
Hey everyone, welcome to SmartPro Radio. Today we have a very special episode, but I am going to tell you, this material we're going to talk about today, it's going to be heavy. It's an intense topic, but it's one that needs to have a light shined on it. And before I get into what that topic is and more details, I want to introduce two of our guests today. One is Steve Jones. He is a pastor, a minister. He's got a missionary heart, and he's going to talk to us about what that looks like and how he's interacting with people around the world in a way that you might not really think about still exists. There's a lot of things in the world that we get sheltered from. Steve's going to shine a light on that so that we know what's actually going on outside of our communities, our state, and our country. Joining him is going to be Ben McPherson. Ben is one of SmartPro's financial professionals. He's also in Cookeville, Tennessee, and he's going to spend some time talking about his interaction with Steve and Steve's ministry and what it's done and the life change it's brought to him in his life and his business. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Ben, can you spend a little time talking about your experience and your interaction with Steve?
Yeah. We met, actually, you met my wife at the gym at CrossFit Mayhem, and you guys were going at the same time. And there's a lot of people that go in there, and at that time, especially in the morning. And she came home one time and was like, just ecstatic about this interaction she had with you. And she was like, you got to meet this Steve guy. He's talking about his ministry, and like, you just got to meet him. Like, you got to go have coffee with him. And I'm like, okay. I was like, I'm pretty busy, and it's a crazy time right now, but yeah, absolutely. And then I think every day she was like, did you text Steve? Did you call Steve? Did you set up time to have coffee? And I'm like, no, I haven't. And I'm like, all right, like, just to get her off my back, like, I'm gonna text Steve and we're gonna go have coffee. So I did that, and you were nice enough I go at 5 a.m. and we have coffee right afterwards. And I'm like, hey, you want to come in at 6:30 to have coffee with me? And he was like, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure we'll do that. And we sat down, and Steve just explained, Autumn Hope Ministries is what Steve created, and he's going to explain that here in a minute. But when he went through what he does and the different types of ministries that he has, it just blew my mind. Like, it just completely turned my world upside down in what I thought, that had no idea what existed. And it was so shocking that I think I only absorbed probably 10% of what we talked about. Then I went home and I was talking to Nicole, and I was like, this is insane. Like, we've got to do something. We got to be a part of this. And I think even months had passed, and I was like, just get wrapped up in the world and just wrapped up into work, into life, into kids, and just get busy like the rest of us, which is I think that's our kryptonite sometimes, is just being quote unquote busy. And then like nothing other than God put this back in my heart to where like I got to reach back out to Steve. We got to get connected again so I can expand my knowledge on this, because like I said, I retained about 10% of it, and I wanted to hear more. And at that point, I was ready, right? And so I called you back, and I'm like, let's go have coffee again. And you're like, yeah, absolutely, let's do it. And then that was the point where it was like, all right, we're putting our foot down, like we're going to be a part of this one way or another. And without going into too much detail of how we decided to be a part of it, can you just explain a little bit what is Autumn Hope Ministries?
Sure. Autumn Hope Ministries is a 501c3 ministry that I've had now for 22 some odd years. I pastored churches for many years, and then we started the Lord, while I was pastoring, the Lord led me into a lot of what we call mission trips, around the world. And it was something I really enjoyed doing. And I enjoyed doing it so much that I think I got to doing too many, and my congregation wasn't real happy with me. But there came a point when the Lord told me it was time to step out and do this full time. So people call me a missionary. I stepped out, but I'm not the traditional missionary. I don't live in a foreign country. I don't, have my whole life there. I travel, and that enables me to do a lot of different things because I can minister in different countries and so forth. But I founded Autumn Hope, and when I was coming up with this name, look, Steve Jones is about as common, simple name as you can get, right? I didn't want Steve Jones Ministries. That just didn't sound good to me. So I started praying, and one morning I was reading in Timothy, and Paul is talking to Timothy, and he tells him, it's right at the end, and he's telling Timothy, get my coat, get my books, come before winter was the phrase he used. And a lot of people probably don't know it, but that phrase out of Timothy has been used many times over years to call missionaries. God's used it. And I had read it many times before, but that morning it hit me and I couldn't get it out of my spirit. For 2 weeks, Lord, I'll come, but you got to tell me where, I'm even looking at plane tickets. I don't even know where I'm looking, but I'm looking. And so 2 weeks later, I'm sitting in the same spot during my devotional time, and I'm reading in Jeremiah. Jeremiah 8:20 says, the summer has passed, the harvest is over, but we are not saved. And that verse caught me. And I thought, that's interesting. And the Spirit spoke to me, and he said, put the two together. So I started thinking, come before winter, summer has passed, and we're not saved. And I'm a little slow sometimes. And the Spirit said, where does that put you? I thought, well, that puts me in autumn. He said, that's exactly right. He said, you live in the autumn of time, but there's still hope in Jesus. So that's where the whole name comes from. So we've spent 20 some odd years now investing in people around the world, doing a lot of different things. We train pastors, we build churches, we do evangelism. But back in 2010, I think it was, God led me into the nation of Pakistan. And that's where things really started change toward a lot of what we're going to talk about today. So Autumn Hope has been around for quite some time now. We're not a big ministry. I guess you could say I am Autumn Hope. My wife is the secretary of Autumn Hope, so that's pretty much what happens. But God has used us and allowed me to be a part of and see things that most people in this world will never see and probably don't want to see in a lot of cases.
Or even want to
know. Yeah. A lot of people will hear some of the things that I'm going to say today, and it's real easy just to say, oh, wow, that's terrible, and go on about what you're doing.
That's right.
Yeah. And that's sad because Jesus told us, well, it's interesting in James chapter 2, I believe it is, 1:27. It says, religion that God the Father accepts is to care for widows and orphans. That's a powerful statement. And we don't read that one very often because it kind of focuses in a little bit more about what we should be doing.
Yeah.
That's right.
And when I first heard, again, like you're talking about missionary, you're not the typical missionary. When I think of mission trips, I grew up in a pretty traditional church, and a mission trip to me, the only thought I had about what a mission trip is that you go over to another country. and you either help build a facility, or you're immersed into the community to just spread the good word, spread the gospel. So I thought that, that's all that existed. And then, and those are fantastic. But what Steve's about to explain is just, when I talk about blew my mind, like I had no idea the opportunity that was out there, because it's not the type of ministry that most people think about, or the type of mission trip that most people think about.
Yeah. I really try to stay away from that term mission trips, because there is a stigma. There's a picture in people's mind. And honestly, most mission trips are half vacation, half mission, and I have no problem with that. I do them. I just got back from East Africa about a week and a half ago, and I've got 6 of those on the calendar where I'm carrying teams next year to these places. But typically if people ask me, I just call it a mission, because that's what it is. I'm on mission for God.
Yeah.
And to me, that the mission trip has a little stigma to it sometimes.
That's right.
That, it's not exactly what I do, but yeah.
So you mainly have two different types of ministries, if I understand correctly. So I kind of want to leave I don't know if I can have a favorite, if that's a thing, but I want to leave my favorite for the second one. But tell us a little bit about Africa.
Okay. Yeah. I've been working in the nation of Kenya for 25 years. I've been to Kenya over 120 times in that time period. And, we have planted 350 churches in Kenya. I don't even know how many pastors we've trained over the years. We have, we had an orphanage at one time that we started from scratch and ran. We we gave it to another ministry to run about 8 years ago, because they were more set up to do that than we were. And it's still running at this point. We do, well, for simple fact, this last trip, I was there for almost 3 weeks. We did 2 major outdoor crusades just in huge market areas. And in those 2 crusades, we had over 1,000 people make a decision for Christ. And so, we do a lot of the traditional stuff in that way. And I carry people to do those. It was a small team this time, but like I said, I've got several set up for next year. And what I've learned is, if I can carry somebody on one of these trips, it does change their life, because they begin to see what the rest of the world is really like. Culture is an interesting thing. You can read it in a book, and it can explain all the culture of another place to you. You can even watch videos on YouTube, see the pictures, you can see all of that. But the only way that you can really understand another culture and what's going on is to experience it.
Yeah, that's right.
And to actually insert yourself into it. And because culture is something that's seen and it's heard when it comes right down to it. And so I try to carry as many people as I can. I'm getting older, and these trips aren't getting any easier, but hey, until God says stop, we're still going. So, Africa, we also have worked in East Africa. Part of that fits into one of your favorites, so I'll hold that part of it a little bit. But we've worked with child soldiers in Liberia after the Civil War there, which is a horrible situation. They're not children anymore. They're young men, 25, 35 years old, that have been on drugs since they were 5 or 6 and put on those drugs by warlords. We've done things with them. Here's one key to what we do. Jesus told us to go into all the world and make disciples. Mm-hmm. And that's our number one goal. But, there's an old saying, it sounds kind of corny in a way, but there's an old saying that says that they can't hear what you're saying if their stomach is growling too loud to hear you. And so there are a lot of cases where we have to deal with social issues, physical issues. First of all, it shows them we love them and that we care about them, that God loves them. And we have to deal with some of those things sometime before we can actually share the gospel with them. The saying is, they don't want to hear what you say until they know how much you care. Mm-hmm. And so we do a lot of feeding. And Kenya has seasons where it's dry and crop. Kenya, the people there live day to day. And so if they have a bad crop or something like that, then they've got problems.
Mm-hmm.
And we've fed thousands of, probably millions over the years now. And, if that's what's necessary, that's what we do. But we do it in the name of Jesus. We do it for the kingdom and with the ultimate goal of sharing the love of God with them in Jesus. So that's what we've done there for 25 years in East Africa, also in Ghana, in Liberia. Been to a few other nations, been to Tanzania, been to Lesotho. I could name several others, but mainly it's focused in 2 or 3 specific areas. So
I want to jump in here too, because one of the things you mentioned was culture. And in the United States and in the Western world, one of the cultural norms is debt. It's something that we see every day when we talk to clients. We're going through the baby steps. We're doing the debt snowball, getting people out of debt. And there's people that are on fire to get out of debt because they know that it takes away their freedom, takes away their time, their purpose, what they can be doing, their joy in life. It's a burden on them. But it's a burden one in the sense that, hey, you still can have a job. You can go out there and earn income. You can pay it off. You can put a plan together. You can find a financial professional to help you get that knocked out. You can invest long-term. You can build wealth. There's all this opportunity after debt is out of your life and gone. But, when we talk about that, that's a very Western thing. That's a very Western thing that this is okay. It's normal. It's no big deal. And I remember back in 2012, 2013, before I moved to Florida, I used to go to a church in Atlanta called Passion City Church. And in the springtime, they would do this giant awareness campaign for slavery around the world. And it was like X out slavery. And I would sit there and be like, what are y'all talking about? Like, I have no idea that this is a thing. What do you mean? Why is this something that we're spending a bunch of time on? It seems so foreign and out there, if it even is there. Is this real? Is this the same sense of what I think about it? Then you go back to scripture and you listen to Ramsey and the Ramsey personalities on the Ramsey show. And they talk about how, the borrower is slave to the lender. And in Western world, we're like, okay, whatever. But in the ancient Near East, when that was written, that was literal. That was literal. It wasn't just, hey, you shouldn't have debt. And that's how we look at it now. And it takes away your freedom. But in other places, it literally takes away your freedom. And so what we're going to be talking about with what's happening in places like Liberia, I want you to go into a little bit more of information on that, if you will. And I know that you have to protect the infrastructure and the sources and the people that you work with. So we don't want names or anything that's going to harm the ministries that you're doing in those areas, but also Pakistan. And, if you're not good with geography, Pakistan is not in the most friendly place in the world for the Christian faith. It borders Afghanistan on one side, India. This is a Muslim majority country that typically is not very favored, has a lot of favor towards other religions being in there. But there's, up to 2 million Christians in Pakistan. And some of these other places like Liberia that have gone through terrible civil wars. And if you know anything about the founding of the country of Liberia and how that came to be, it came out of some of these topics that we're talking about right now, even from the United States back in the 1800s, 1900s. So you look at this problem of debt and how it still is around the world. It's still a big issue where freedom is literally taken away and people are put into bondage. Can you speak about what you see in Liberia and then get to what I know Ben's favorite topic of and what he was able to participate with of what's happening in Pakistan and, the evils that you've seen firsthand and the hope that Autumn Hope Ministries has brought and what you have been able to do and what people like Ben have been able to interact with to actually bring hope and use the skill sets that he has and the ability he has to actually interact with you and help bring people out of bondage, not metaphorically, but literally in these places.
Sure. You mentioned Liberia. Most people don't realize Liberia, that land was given to slaves that were returning to Africa. And the name Liberia comes from the word liberty. And it was given, by the U.S. for that purpose. unfortunately, it's been a mess ever since. In Liberia, what we have dealt with, it actually is from Liberia and all the way down the west coast around the Horn of Africa there, where these fishermen will go in. There's a lot of poverty. Africa's full of poverty. It's everywhere. And these fishermen will go into these really impoverished communities. Fishing is a big industry. Up until just 10 or 15 years ago, almost all the tilapia you ate in the U.S. probably came from that area. Doesn't so much now because it's farmed here. But these fishermen will go into these villages that are just so poor and the people have nothing, and they will give these people money. But I guess you would say as collateral, they'll take their young sons. Now they tell them we're going to get them in school, we're going to teach them a trade, but they become slaves. Many of them, they stay on these fishing boats all day long fishing. They live in boxes. I found 10 one day living in a box that was about 8 by 8 and about 4 foot high. And the fishermen would lock them in there.
You found 10
boys,
what?
10 boys, young boys. The oldest one was probably 11. The youngest one was probably 7. And we found them literally locked into this box. It was 4 foot tall, maybe 8 foot square. 10 boys living in that box at night, every night. And that's the way they're treated. I could tell you story after story of the horrors of that. But what happens is they're taken from their village. They're put on a boat. They're taken up the coast somewhere into a different place. They don't know how to get back home. And so they can't run away. They don't have anywhere to go. Excuse me. And so it's a terrible situation. You put on top of that Liberia was in a civil war for 25 years and was full of child soldiers. And these young boys, as early as 5 and 6 years old, were given cocaine and were given a gun. And they would keep them high so they would not be afraid and fight. So they've been on drugs all their life. Now they're 25, 35, war's over. They don't have a life. There's a cemetery in Monrovia, the capital of Liberia, a large cemetery, takes up about a city block. And over the last 15 years, what's happened is all of the coffins and all that have been thrown over the wall. And these boys, well, young men now, live in this cemetery. And they're on drugs, and it's just horrible conditions and a horrible place. We've done a lot of work there, just feeding and talking to and trying to just show them that somebody cares about them because they don't have anybody. And so, that's one factor in all of this. The other factor is these young boys on these boats fishing. And I'll tell you a real quick story just to give you an idea of how these fishermen treat these young boys. We got one young boy, and he was telling us the story of his friend. Now, this boy didn't even know his name. He went by the name Bigfoot because he had big feet. And that's all he knew. He didn't know his name. He was Bigfoot. Bigfoot told us this story of his friend. I think he said his name was Joe. I can't remember, but anyway, it doesn't matter. And they were on a boat one day fishing, a smaller boat, and the fisherman was on there with them. And Joe was sick, had malaria, really sick. And so he wasn't working well. And so the fisherman keeps yelling at him and beating him, trying to make him work. And the kid couldn't. He was probably 8 years old at the time, 9, something like that. And so finally, the fisherman gets so mad at this kid, he throws him overboard. They're in a lake. They're in Lake Volta, which is one of the largest freshwater lakes in the world. It's in Ghana. And so he throws him overboard. And every time this kid would come up to get breath, the fisherman would push him back down with a paddle until he drowned, literally drowned him. After he drowned him, he pulled him back in the boat, went up to a sandy bank, threw a little sand over him, and left him. So that's the way they're treated. And the world hears very little about this, if any at all. So we've worked with a couple of other larger agencies. Save the Children has one, has a home there in Ghana, and we've gotten some boys into it. We haven't worked as much in that one in the last year or two as we did a few years back, but we still try to do what we can there. So Liberia's got a lot of different issues, or the west coast of Africa, I guess I should say, because it kind of involves all of them. A lot of different issues, but it's still this is with children mainly, or younger boys, and very few girls in that area. It's mainly boys. The estimates that I've read are that there are probably somewhere around 25,000 boys that are in this slavery in some fashion throughout the area. Tell you the other thing they do. I know a lot of you out there like to eat your chocolate. Did you realize that most of the cocoa that made chocolate comes from that part of the world? And most of that cocoa is picked and processed by young boys that are slaves.
Mm.
And not many people know that. The world doesn't talk about it because it likes chocolate too much.
Yeah.
And we have a tendency to look over things when it affects something we like or want. But much of the chocolate industry in that part of the world, the processing of the cocoa and so forth, is done by young boys in slavery like that. So that's one issue in that part of the world. We do everything we can to help there. We can't help as much. We're always looking at new ways to try to do more there. Matter of fact, I got a message just yesterday from a person in Liberia. I'm probably going to plan a trip there early next year and look into some other opportunities and possibilities. But you take that, now we move a little further east and we move into Pakistan. And when I talk about Pakistan, the stories I'm going to tell you are true. I won't call any names or places or anything like that simply because I don't want to put my sources there in jeopardy. To give you a quick idea, I was supposed to be there in September. The Lord kept telling me, no, don't go, don't go. I was hard-headed and I was going until I talked to my contact there, and he said, I've been having the same thoughts. I said, okay, I'll listen. So I didn't go. I postponed it. The week I was supposed to have been there in the area I was in, there was another American missionary there. A group of thugs came down from the north, murdered him, raped his wife, cut his body into pieces and burned it in front of her. It could have easily been me. I would have been in that same area at that very time. So the Lord spared me on that, but he didn't, they didn't stop me. I'll be back soon. So this area can be very rough. Pakistan itself can be very rough. But what happens in Pakistan, and this is really where it matches with your analogy and the biblical analogy of the borrower being slave to the lender. In the U.S., we talk cultures, and like you said, in the U.S., everybody borrows money. It's just what we do. It's the way we live, good or bad, that's the way it is. And if you don't pay it back in the U.S., if it's a home, you might lose your home, or, if it's other things, about the only thing it does is kicks your credit score, right? I mean, that's just the way it is. But over there is not that way. What happens is over there, if you're a Christian in Pakistan, you're obviously a great minority. And because it is an Islamic country, if you're a Christian, you can't get the good jobs. All you get are the very menial jobs. You might be able to drive a taxi. You might be a street sweeper. You might be able to work in the home of a Muslim, cleaning their house, those kinds of things, about all you can do. And we all know that sometimes in life things happen and you need a little money. You need a little cash. Your child gets sick, child getting married, could be a lot of different things. And so these Christians then need cash, and what they end up doing is they go and they borrow money from a Muslim. And most of these Muslims that they borrow from are wealthy, and they run, get this, because this is very biblical if you think about it, they make bricks. They have these huge brick yards where they're literally taking this mud, mixing it up, putting it in a mold, making these bricks by hand, thousands and thousands of them. That's what they build with all over that part of the world. If you can't pay your debt back in the agreed upon time, which is usually about 6 months, then you have to go and you have to work for this brick owner, this brickyard owner, and you have to make bricks. You have to live there in that area. The conditions are horrible. Food is scarce. Water is not good. And you're making bricks in the summertime. It's about 120 degrees out in the sun, no shade, all day long. You have to make 2,000 bricks a day as a family. If you don't make 2,000 bricks a day, then you get nothing for that day. You can make 1,999 and you don't get paid anything. You can make 1,995 and have a thunderstorm and it wets them all before they set. You get nothing. So it's the system is against you from day one. Honestly, and I compare it to some of these I call them check cashing places around title loans, where the fees are so high you can't put, it traps you.
Yeah.
It's designed for that. And that's the way this system is. So some of these people have been making bricks for 20 years in these places. Well, what ends up happening is this. You have, they have children, and the children, I have some videos that where children are actually out there helping their parents and making these bricks. I've got pictures of 4-year-olds making bricks. And what happens is, and these conditions are so bad, if you're 50 years old in a brickyard, you're an old man, literally a really old man, because you die young under those conditions.
Sure.
When you die that young, you leave children. The problem is now the children are responsible for the parents' debt. Okay. And that's where it really gets tough. So these children, they're kept there as slaves, trying to work off their parents' debt. So now here's what happens then. So you get this brickyard owner, and he's running a business. And like any other businessman, there things happen in business, and you need a little cash, right? Business owner needs a little cash flow. So what he will do is he will take these young girls, especially the girls. Usually the boys, they don't, because boys can grow up and work. But the young girls, they will take them and they will sell them. And they'll sell them typically to older Muslim men who will marry them at the age of 7, 8, 9. I have seen as young as 7. And when they do, they abuse them physically and everything else. They'll keep them 10, 12 years until they're just tired of them. And the girl is just a shell of a human being almost at that point. And then he'll sell them into the black market sex trade, which goes into Hong Kong, Singapore, Bangkok, all the big cities in the Far East there, where prostitution is a big thing. And they live their life just shells of humans from that point on. So that's what happens. Not many people talk about this because it's one of the world's best kept dirty secrets, I guess you'd say. And like you said earlier, as you were starting us off there, slaves, who still has slaves? That ended hundreds of years ago, right? Wrong. It did not. And it still goes on. And these slaves are slaves because of their debt. And so what we have been able to do, we have been able to work out a way. We have 2 things going. One of them's brand new. But for about 7 years now, we have come up with a way that we can go in when they sell these girls. We have a Muslim imam who literally lets us know when a girl's going to be sold. And we go in, not me, obviously, because if I went in, it'd blow everything up. But I've got Pakistani people who go in and literally buy these girls back. All you have to do is pay their debt, usually, which is only $800, $900, somewhere in that range, maybe $1,000. And you pay their debt and you get them. And then what we do is we take them. We can't get them out of the country. The government just won't allow it. There's no way we've been able to do that yet. But we take them, we get them out, we carry them to a doctor. We get them some clothes because most of them only have what they're wearing. Then we place them. We try to find out if they have any Christian relatives that are not slaves. And if so, we try to put them with family. Sometimes that's very difficult to do because they don't even know where they're from. So, which just the information's not there. If that doesn't work, we try to find people in the church that'll take them. The churches, we've got some churches there, a couple of larger churches now. And if that doesn't work, our final opportunity is there are 4 or 5 orphanages in Pakistan that are run by, I'm not even going to say where here, but they're run by other countries in Europe, people in other countries in Europe. They're not billed as Christian, but they're run by Christians. That's all I'll say. And so that's our final, our last chance, to put these kids, if we can't put them anywhere else, at least that way they're not on the brick kilns. They're not being taught the Islamic way all day and so forth. So over the last 7 years or so, we've gotten out about 250 girls, something like that, in that situation. And I could have gotten out 5 times that. It's a funding issue. I said earlier, we're a small ministry, and it's just a funding issue. Sometimes for us, we just can't do it. And so that's really what holds us back. We have a new program we've just started, which I'm really excited about. We now have a setup through the church there, through one of our larger churches there. And when I say larger church, this church will run 2,000 on Sunday morning under a big tent. Wow. And I'll explain that in just a few minutes. But this church, we've come up with a way that if the family meets certain qualifications that's there making bricks, we will go in and pay off their debt. And when their debt's paid off, they release them. That's one thing about them. They'll do that without much argument. And so the family will be released. We're putting this family in a simple home for about, we say 90 days up front. We're paying for their home. We're paying for their food. We're basically taking care of them for 3 months. During that 3 months, we're doing several things. Number one, we're trying to help Dad find a real job. It won't be much, but something. It might be driving a taxi. It might be being a tailor. We're teaching sewing. Just simple things like that. And if we can find something for Mom, that's great too. So we keep them that way for 90 days. At the end of 90 days, if they're flourishing and going great, fine, they're on their own. If not, if they're doing well, but still struggling a little, we can extend that another 2-3 months, whatever we think is necessary, and try to get them through. So we've got 3 families. No, I'm sorry, we got 5 families we just put into that program. They're in their first 90-day period, and they're all looking good so far. So that's a new program we're trying. So here's the bottom line. To get a girl out and put her with somebody, people ask me how much. I'm saying now around $1,200, give or take. And like I said, that includes paying off the debt. It includes getting her some clothes. It includes getting her to a doctor and getting her checked out. It also includes giving the family or whoever we put her with something small. I mean, because, all of a sudden you take on a new child, it costs money, right? So we try to give them just something small. It's usually on $100, $200, and to help them get things started. This family program that we're starting, we're saying $3,500 to get a family out, to put them up the first 90 days and to take care of them. All of these things we're doing are under the radar, because if certain people find out about it there, they can make it extremely difficult on my people there, my connections. In fact, they could even go as far as to be arrested, some of them. When I go there, I'm not supposed to be doing what I do when I'm there. I get in on a business visa through the back door, and I could tell you how I get that, but I'm not going to go into that because it would put some people at risk. And so I'm kind of slipping in the back door myself to do some of these things. People ask me a lot of times, why don't you put stuff on Facebook? Well, there's a good reason for that. I can't, because I can't endanger other people and myself. So all of this, though, goes back to what you said about debt. It's all tied to debt, and in both places, literally. And debt is seen very differently around the world in these other cultures. It's still seen the ancient way. There used to be debtors' prisons years ago.
Right.
And so, that's the way debt's viewed very seriously in these other places, not like it is here where it's just a way of life. So that's kind of what we're doing. And it gets difficult at times, and difficult to talk about at times. I've seen things in this that I can't unsee. I had a young girl one time, and I was there and saw this, didn't see it happen, but was there a few minutes later, an hour later. Was on one of the brick kilns, and a couple had a young daughter. I'd say she was probably 8 or 9 years old. And the girl had been sick for 2 or 3 days. And they kept asking the brickyard owner, could they take her to the doctor? And he would simply say, no, get back to work, and put her to work too. Well, she couldn't work. But so this went on 2 or 3 days, and they finally took her to the brickyard owner and said, please, will you get her to a doctor? He went into a fit of rage, pushed the girl down, grabbed her by her feet. You know how we'll play with our kids, swinging them around? Well, he had this girl by her feet, swinging her around, and then let her go, and crashed her head into a stack of bricks, and it just exploded her head. And then he said, now you get back to work, to the parents. That's the kind of mentality we're dealing with a lot of times in these places. Mm. And so it's hard for people here in the U.S. to comprehend some of this, because we say that's barbaric, and it is. But it's real, and it's happening, and it's happening in a big way. And the areas that I'm sharing with you are very small areas of the world. But I don't know what else to say right now, but help.
Yeah. When we sat down the second time, because I think that's when it had to click. And you were telling me about this, about, paying off their debt and getting them to a doctor and placing them in a home and helping the family out for a few months financially. I was thinking, like, that's got to be thousands of dollars. Like, I can't, how are you getting support? And then when you told me that it cost $1,200 to take one girl out of slavery, take her to a doctor to get checked out, and then place her in a home to get food, like, it just blew my mind. I don't have any other words for it. And I just said, look, the next girl, the next opportunity that you have, let me know. Like, I will do whatever it takes. Being a father of 2 girls, 9 and 11, I can't even fathom the point at which these parents are getting to. I mean, they know what they're signing up for. They know that if I go, they've seen it probably time and time again. It's that part of that culture. If I go get a loan, or I need help from this Muslim, that this is the situation that I'm putting my family in hopes somehow that we're going to get out of this. And most of them don't.
Right.
And so I don't think it was maybe a month later, you texted me and you said, I've got an opportunity. I've got 2 girls that I know are basically coming up for sale. Yeah. And I was like, done. Like, just tell me. Tell me how much it is. Like, it doesn't matter. We'll do whatever we can. And that was so real. I think for a lot of ministries, it's difficult because it's easy. I would say it's easy for us. I don't honestly know the numbers in our country of people that provide to ministries and charities, but it's easy for us to give $1 and just hope that it's getting used well. But this was real. I knew the connection with you, and you've told me your whole story, and so I knew that there's actually 2 girls that we have the opportunity to free from slavery and give a chance to live a completely different life. And so that was real. But it wasn't until, and I know you can't do this every single time, but you sent me a picture. Probably a month after that, you sent me a picture of these 2 girls, and we'll share that so everybody can see. That just crushed me. And these girls, I think they were close to the age of our daughters. Yeah. And that just takes, that was what made it real. And that it couldn't be more real than that, other than just me being in the country, seeing them. Like, two beautiful daughters of Christ, who are free, who have been set
Right.
free from the slavery, free from the bondage that that they were placed into, not because of them, not they were placed in there because their parents, but they had to pay the debt of their parents.
Exactly. If I could say one more thing here, and this really, look, here in the U.S., we talked about debt's a different animal. There was a time in my life when I was slave to it, you know, and I had to learn my lessons and work my way out of it. But what happens, I think, a lot of times to us here, and it also happens there. There are a lot of people on these brickyards there making bricks who have been doing this for 25, 30 years. And if those people, if you took them off today, they'd be back in 2 or 3 weeks because they have become so accustomed to living in that type of setting and that atmosphere. That's all they know. And if you take them out of it, they don't know how to live any other way. Okay. So the slave gets free and he becomes a slave again. I'd like to warn, now this is on the American side here. You know, you're talking about debt, and we know how horrible debt can be. You can get into a situation where you become so comfortable in your debt that it's your way of life.
That's right.
And I would warn your listeners, our listeners here today, against that. Don't let yourself get into that situation, because once you do, it's even harder to break it. And I was talking to Ben before we started. You know, biblically speaking, and I know you guys have plans, all these things that you can help people with that, and that's awesome. People need help. Biblically speaking, the way you get out of debt is you give. Jesus said, if you give, I'll give back, running over. And you know, he's gonna, you can't outgive him. Mm-mm. And sometimes we quit giving because we think we don't have it. And that's when we need to be giving more. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because giving is one of the best ways to get out of debt for 2 reasons. Number one, it's what he said, but number two is it takes all the attention off yourself. In Colossians chapter 3, it says, don't put your mind on things of this world, put them on the next. Yeah. Put them on things above. Mm-hmm. And, you know, everybody talks about how great heaven's going to be, but I don't think a lot of people realize there are going to be paupers in heaven. Now, a pauper in heaven, relatively speaking, is different from a poor person here, mm-hmm. but still, there are going to be people when they get to heaven who aren't going to have anything because they haven't laid up their treasures where the moth and the rust can't touch them. And so I just encourage people, you know, giving is important because it does more than even just getting money back and being able to pay off debt. Giving changes us inside. It changes our focus. Yeah. And that's important, I think. So, sorry, guy, I know you guys are financial pros, and I don't mean to be pulling on that, but I do think that's a fact. Yeah. And so,
well, you know, where that really, Steve, where that lives, and Ben, you know this as well, is baby step 7 is to live and give like no one else. And I think a lot of people go, what does that mean? Why would I build, you know, have this freedom, pay off my home, invest diligently in good growth stock mutual funds over the years, do things right, and then give it away? Like, what does that really mean? And what does that look like? And then, you know, Ben, it goes back to what you said. Hey, I know this person. I knew it was real. You said that. And that's how a lot of people feel about giving. They're like, I don't know where it's going to go. What if I give $1, does 80 cents go to fund the organization's, you know, marketing and infrastructure, and 20 cents is going to the actual people in need? There's this worry where you can look at it with such skepticism. You say, you know what? I'm not going to give to anything because I don't know where it's going to go, or I'll wait to find the right place to give. And you never do, because it's not a priority perhaps. And so for me, you know, having an opportunity to be at baby step 7 and go, okay, I want to live and give like no one else. And the live part doesn't mean that I want, you know, the nicest car or whatever that looks like. That's great. You know, if you enjoy something nice, go get it. But at the same time, There's so many people in need that we can overlook quickly when we're insulated by our own culture. We're insulated by the 4-inch glass screen that we look at all day, every day, and not actually lift our eyes up and look further beyond the horizon and go, wow, there's people out in this world, this 8 billion people on this planet that need help. And they need help in a huge way, no matter where they're at, in a huge way. And we heard stories about East Africa. We heard stories about Pakistan, but there's stories all over the globe, including what's happening in our own country, that people need to be involved. They need to be fiercely, they need to have that fierce mentality, that gazelle intensity, say, I'm going to get out of debt. I'm going to live within my means, and I'm going to be in a position to where I can be a person of impact. You know, for us as a company, one of the things that we talk about a lot of times internally, but I'll talk about it externally here, is we want to be a company that is the light on the hill. We want to be a company that reflects Christ to the world. And that's a strange thing to say for a company, because a lot of times companies are just, it's no big deal. It's just this is where you work, and that's different. And we feel like we can do something of major impact, whether that's helping people, no matter where they're at, invest money wisely, or helping people know, hey, if you want to give, here's organizations that are making massive impact around the globe that we want to shine a light on because other people aren't. And I say this with this in mind as well. This episode 100% is going to be suppressed. It's going to be hard for people to find it. It's going to be hard to listen to this content. This is heavy stuff. And, you know, it's things like this. These conversations have to happen. People have to wake up to what's actually going on around the globe. And these things have been going on forever. And to think that they've gone away is naive. But to also think that you can't make a difference and make an impact is equally as naive. And it's time for people to wake up and say, hey, there's more that I can do if I just get serious about this financial stuff, to where I can give and be a participant in what's happening with ministries like yours and thousands of others that are making huge impact around the world, helping do what we're supposed to be doing, which is what you mentioned earlier, watching after the widows and the orphans, taking care of the poor, doing the things that we're meant to be able to do and have the capacity and the resources to do. And all of our listeners can participate in something like this. Steve, how does somebody, as we're wrapping up here, actually interact with you and your ministry if they feel led to do something here at the end of our conversation?
Well, the simplest way is we do have a website, autumnhopeministries.com. On that website, it's a simple website. I don't have anything fancy, but there is a donations page on there. You can give electronically. The information is also there if you need to mail in a check or whatever, you know, who and where, so forth, to mail that in. There's also a contact form on there if they just want to ask me questions. And I don't have a problem with, you know, giving my email address out. That's steve@autumnhopeministries.com. And if you want more information and talk to me about that, feel free to email me, and you know, we can chat about it. And I'll answer any questions that I possibly can for you. So that's the basic ways to do that.
We talk about just, you know, $1,200, you know, $3,500 for a family, and it obviously doesn't need to be all or nothing. I mean, it's just like any other ministry, you know, just even little commitments. You know, I think about one of the things that just these numbers that kind of blow me away that I just wanted to touch on really quick to put perspective to this, because this, according to Lending Tree, the average car loan payment in the United States today is $690. The average personal loan payment is $517. The average credit card payment is $273. The average student loan payment is $277. Just getting out of average and getting out of what we call normal, because normal is broke, debt is dumb, that totals up to $1,757. In 1 month, the average person is spending more on their debt than it costs to free one girl from slavery, and that in 1 month, and that just blows my mind. So, you know, again, steve@autumnhopeministries.com to send you an email.
There's one other thing I'd like to say. You made the comment earlier about people say, well, if I give this, is 80% going to go, you know, to somebody's salary and that so forth. I'm going to be real open here for just a minute. first of all, I made a commitment when I started Autumn Hope to myself. If someone gives me a donation and they put on that donation Pakistan girls, for instance, 100% of it goes to Pakistan girls. I don't keep any admin out of it. None. If it's designated, it all goes there. And I've done that for 20-something years. Now, with that said, I do have to raise my salary. I have to pay for my bills, just like anybody else. But I'm going to say this very openly, and I'm not saying it to brag. I'm just saying it because I want it clarified. I've been doing this for 20-something years. The most salary I've had in a year from Autumn Hope is $22,000. My wife works. That's how we survive. She works so that I can do this. So we're not one of those big ones that's taking 80%, 90% out of it. We struggle, but God takes care of us. Mm-hmm. And so I just want everybody to know that if you give to one of these projects, that's where it's going, all of it.
That's amazing.
I trust God for myself, not the people.
Yeah.
So.
And you mentioned,
Steve, thank you for being bold and sharing what you've shared. I know that a lot of this, in our conversations before, it's not the first time I heard it, and it felt like the first time again with a lot of the information you shared. And I know that some of this was hard for you to share, and with you and your team to make sure that they're protected and the infrastructure in these countries and places. So we appreciate you taking the time to get out of your comfort zone and talk about this with our audience in a bigger way than maybe you normally would in a one-on-one conversation. And Ben, thank you for putting this together, for wanting a light shined on this and you participating, because that's how we got to this point, So it's interesting that conversation at the gym turned into a cup of coffee, turns into you talking to thousands of people about what you're doing. So, I think it's a fantastic thing. And I encourage people that, look into this and see if there's more that you can do, and don't get comfortable with debt, because it's not a normal thing anywhere else. And in fact, it's an incredibly evil thing in other places. And so make sure that we don't get lulled to sleep with it. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and sharing this with us.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you, sir, for the opportunity.
Hey, thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of SmartPro Radio. I hope you enjoyed it. And look, I'd love if you consider partnering with Autumn Hope Ministry on bringing freedom to people globally. Our next guest is Herb Jenkins. Herb is no stranger to every dollar. In fact, he knows everything about it, and he should, because he runs it. So make sure that you subscribe and tell a friend, because we put out new episodes on the first Monday of each month.
Discussions in this show are for entertainment and educational purposes only and should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through registered representatives of Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a broker-dealer, member FINRA, SIPC. Advisory services through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors Incorporated, a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and SmartPro Financial are not affiliated.